It's time to chill out and get ready for a mediocre Q&A live stream. If you're old enough, grab yourself your favorite adult beverage, and if you're not, stick with apple juice. Put your feet up and relax. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. And now let's cue up the intro music. Well, hello to everybody. I hope you guys are all doing well. I have not very much to complain about myself. I'm very fortunate, and I realize that, and I'm thankful for that. There's a lot of craziness going on all over the place, everywhere, right? All around the world, and really makes me, appreciate the fact that I have electricity and I have a house and I have a safe, healthy family to come home to. It's just kind of crazy. Just kind of puts things in perspective for sure, So I hope you guys are all doing well. I hope you and yours are all safe and healthy. So to start off this stream today, I definitely want to address a point that Robbie had asked about sending TrueTech Tools affiliate links to him. And I will address that too. So I do have an affiliate program set up through TrueTech Tools. If you guys are interested in purchasing any tools through TrueTech Tools, you can use my offer code BIGPICTURE, one word. It'll get you an 8% discount on checkout. And then furthermore, if you send me an email and let me know what you want, I can generate an affiliate link. You can send me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com. I will tell you a trick though, because I'm really bad on responding on the emails lately because I'm super busy. What you can actually do is go to any one of my videos and look in the show notes, and there's affiliate links in there. You can actually click any affiliate link as long as you're logged into your TrueTech Tools account, and I'll get credit for whatever you purchase as long as you click one of my links. So even if it's not something you're going to buy, if you just click the link and it takes you to truetechtools.com, make sure you're logged in, and then whatever you purchase, I'm supposedly supposed to get credit for it. So, but anyways, yeah, be sure to use the offer code BIGPICTURE too. So hello to everybody. Carl K says, are there any new Fieldpiece tools coming down the pipe? Not that I really know of. I'm sure there is, but I'm not privy to that information. So in the past, I have done beta testing for Fieldpiece. And of course, if I was doing beta testing, I couldn't share that information. But I have nothing to share at this moment. nothing that I'm, able to share. I know that there's all kinds of stuff that they're always working on, but I have nothing that I'm allowed to share or that I know that they want to share at this point in time. Something that's interesting that I've started to notice is that people associate me with Fieldpiece. And in reality, I honestly don't work with Fieldpiece that much. They're a great company. I know a lot of their people and I've worked with them in the past. But I mean, I can probably say that like they don't pay me like a sponsorship fee or anything like that. I've just done projects with them. Like I was a beta tester, and then I've done projects where I make like a video series about certain tools that I use or something like that. But genuinely, I mean, I'm not really associated with Fieldpiece, but it's funny how people associate me with them. The funny thing, I'm not a very good business person, right? When I started these YouTube videos, I don't like squeeze every company and different things like that. So if you guys, I mean, realistically, I can tell you right now, the only people that have ever paid me have been Fieldpiece, Refrigeration Technologies, and Sporlin. I show tons of tools all the time and I don't get paid. I just like to share the little bit of knowledge that I have. I've worked with those people in the past. It doesn't mean that I work with them all the time, but yeah, it's just funny because when I said I'm a bad business person, because I promote stuff all the time without even like getting paid or anything like that. Like, I promote the heck out of certain things just because I like them. So I just like to share, the little bit of knowledge that I have, and I like to share what I like and what I don't like. And I like to, be as honest as possible. So, it's just kind of funny, but it is what it is. Real quick before I forget, stickers are coming soon to the website. A couple different ones. Still working on some different designs. This is the first prototype. And this is probably a keeper, but there'll be some more too. So working on some different ones. They're not going to be there probably within the next couple weeks. It probably won't happen, but I got a big box of these ones right here. So they will be available on the website, hvacrvideos.com soon. Let's see. Let me see. So, let's see. Joseph Hopkins, HVACR EDU, a good school, you think? You're just starting it today. HVACR.edu is a online platform, an educational platform. Yes, it's good. It's what you make of it. Okay, I've done classes through HVACR EDU, or It's About Q, is a California subsidized portion of HVACR EDU. Yeah, I've done classes through them. It's an online platform. They have like a whole structure and stuff, but it's really about what you make it, because it's an online platform, you're going to have to discipline yourself to make sure that you're following up and doing things in a timely manner. Me personally, I didn't do very well with being responsible for my own destiny, if you will, right? I do better in a structured class where I sit down and someone tells me you have to do this and you have to do that before this date. With online stuff, I get distracted and, and I go off in a different world. But I know it's great for people that are able to stay disciplined and focused, for sure. Yeah, it's a great resource. I mean, any education is better than no education. That's the way that I put it. Anything you can have to better yourself can help you to be prepared more for things in life. Go for it. Do it, for sure. All right, I'm looking through the chat right now. If you guys have questions or comments that you want me to cover, please put them in the chat. Put your questions or comments in caps lock that you want me to cover. That way I can remember to look at it. So looking through, seeing what I'm missing. I already answered that one. Put the email in caps. Looking through, just kind of glancing through the chat. Cool. Not a whole lot going on in here. Let's see. Jason Johnson says RSES. So RSES.org, he is saying, is a great place for educational training. Yes, it actually is. So RSES is a training organization that was started ridiculous a long time ago. It was basically, RSES was the first HVACR training program. Educational program. So basically, RCS was created because at the time, the only places that you can get training in HVAC was to go to manufacturers direct training. So you go to Syracuse for Carrier and different places for the different manufacturers. And there was really no private training per se. So RCS was kind of made as a private training organization. They definitely are not as strong as they used to be, but the value and the resources alone on their website are amazing. The SAM manuals with RSES, I mean, they're such a great resource that people even to this day still go back and look at that literature to kind of set their curriculum and stuff. Ironically, too, RSES was a key person in writing a lot of the trade certification programs too. Little story that I heard, I don't know the exact truthfulness. Things may have been embellished over the years, but I did hear a story about NATE, for instance. NATE is a industry training certification, right? You know, every training certification has their weaknesses and their strengths and whatever. But the rumor that I had heard was that RSES, they were approached to make a training certification, but their test was way too difficult. And so they dumbed it way down. And then they created all these other tests and certification programs because they wanted, you know, majority of the industry to be able to pass these tests. And I personally, I haven't tried in many years, but to take the RSES CM exam, I failed it 2 times, I think. But to be fair, I'm not a person that likes to study for tests. I always like to just kind of go in there and see what I can do. I know that's not a great way to do it. But yeah, I failed the RSES CM exam 2 times. The CM exam is so difficult though, because you're tested on everything all at once. You're tested on oil, gas, steam, refrigeration, airflow, like all this stuff all at the same time on their basic tests. And then once you pass the CM exam, then you can go in for the specialist exams. And then go way into depth. But RSES is a great organization. Technically, I'm still part of RSES. We have a local chapter here in Southern California, but our chapter is not active. It hasn't been active for about 2 years now, but it is the Arrowhead chapter. I was an officer in the Arrowhead chapter too, but honestly, since I started doing these live streams and these videos, I really haven't had time for RSES. So you guys are all responsible for me not being part of RSES anymore. So good on you guys. Good on you guys, right? So anyways. All right. Looking in here. See, Zero Fun says, what sort of music do I listen to? Oh, I listen to everything, man. It just depends on the time of the day. Country music, old school rap. The Super Bowl halftime show was like my childhood, for sure. I was just watching that like in awe. Absolutely amazed. But I listen to everything. Rock, pop, punk. I've gone through phases all over in my life. High school, I was a big NoFX fan. I went through a bunch of different phases. I was a NoFX fan for a while, Linkin Park fan for a while, Blink-182 fan for a while. So I listened to everything. All kinds of good stuff. All right. So I really wanted to start the stream off to talk about how we as technicians can better ourselves. This industry is changing. Every single day it's changing. And I recently just did a talk at the HVAC training symposium for HVAC school in Florida a couple weeks ago. And, you know, I had a bunch of key topics and things that we covered in there. But the biggest thing that I kind of want to talk about is how we as technicians need to be responsible and need to take charge. We need to take control and stop delegating so much stuff to other people because, unfortunately, the way that I see it is there's so many changes. It's so hard to keep up with the way that things are going. And there's new regulations, new flavors of refrigerant, insert name of this regulation and this one and this one and this one and this one. It's so hard to keep up. And we have an employee shortage, right? Just like everybody else, we have an employee shortage. Well, the supply houses have that same employee shortage, and it's getting harder and harder for the supply houses to keep up on their training to be able to educate us as technicians on how things are supposed to be done. And the supply house is slowly, I don't want to say dying off, but they have more competition now, right? I'm still a firm believer in a brick and mortar, but I'm old school, right? So younger generation probably doesn't care whether or not they order online or they order in a brick and mortar. I still have connections and relationships with supply houses. And so I still feel kind of a obligation. Like, of course I want to support a brick and mortar because it's a physical location. Okay. So, you know, supply houses are struggling and it's hard for them to find people. And in the past, us as technicians, we would rely on the supply houses to educate us and give us the information that we needed. Well, we can't really do that anymore. I discussed this at the symposium, and I've discussed it ridiculous amount of times. But, you know, we can't necessarily trust the supply house to size our equipment anymore. We can't really trust them to tell us or educate us about new equipment. I can't tell you how many times I walk into a supply house, even before these videos turned into anything. I'd walk into the supply house because I was active in online communities. Before Facebook was a thing, I was active on the HVAC Talk message board. That was a big one for a while. And then Facebook groups started, and then, you know, all that stuff. But I would walk into supply houses and be like, hey, do you guys have this new tool? And they're like, what? They've never even heard of them. And that became a trend where I would go in all the time and be like, hey, check this out. I got this new tool. And they're like, wow, how does that work? Maybe we should look into that. So supply houses, again, there's good and bad things about supply houses, but they're losing touch in a way with things. So we as technicians need to be a little bit better, and business owners, at knowing what we want, finding the places that we need to go to get what we want, and understanding how things work and how they should be installed. Reading the installation instructions from the manufacturers is key, okay? So I talked about this at the training symposium, and I'll talk about it now too. We have some new standards, the AWEF standards, right? The Department of Energy basically is coming at the refrigeration, the light commercial refrigeration side. So I think it's walk-in coolers of 3,000 square feet or less. You have to have certain energy efficiency requirements, just like we have on the SEER ratings, right? Department of Energy says that we have to have certain SEER ratings for residential and light commercial air conditioning systems. Well, same thing's happening to the refrigeration side, okay? So they're implementing all kinds of changes, and us as technicians and contractors, and it is us, okay, as technicians and contractors, are not doing our due diligence in educating ourselves, okay? I can't tell you how many times I've seen it on Facebook where someone will say, insert name of whatever refrigeration manufacturer, and they'll complain about how they installed a microchannel condenser, or how they installed a head pressure control valve that bypasses at too low of a pressure, and they're blaming the manufacturer. Realistically, it's not the manufacturer's fault. The manufacturer doesn't want to do any of this stuff because what they were making before worked. But because regulations get involved, they're having to do certain things. And if we read the installation materials and read the you know, up on how that equipment works, we would know that we can't just simply install this condensing unit anymore. We may need to, in certain situations, replace the expansion valve at the same time, you know, because of certain, you know, new head pressure control valves, they're floating the head pressure down. So we may need to replace the expansion valve because maybe they didn't have a balanced port valve before. We're doing, you know, electronic expansion valves are really, really popular. And when you're installing electronic expansion valves, you need to be so careful about debris in the system. And so we as technicians will tend to say, you know what, I hate those electronic expansion valves because they always go bad. Well, in reality, what about them went bad? Now, I'm not saying that expansion valves don't go bad, but I would argue that majority of the time an EEV goes bad, there's probably something stuck in it, because someone didn't follow a proper practice when brazing or doing something, and they got sediment or junk, and it's plugging up the valve. It plugged up the strainer. Who knows? Okay. So we need to be thorough and read installation instructions. We need to better ourselves by being better educated. We have the power. We have these amazing phones. We can literally open up an installation and service manual and read it. Now, I'm just as guilty as majority of you guys too by not reading the installation materials, okay? I don't, and it's bitten me so many times that I read it now, because I'm so sick of these silly things. I can tell you a story. I installed a Manitowoc ice machine probably about 10 years ago. Installed a Indigo Manitowoc ice machine, okay? Remote quiet cube machine. And I was with another one of my service techs, and we opened up the box for the line set because this was customer ordered equipment, okay? So we installed an evaporator, a head unit downstairs, a condenser unit on the roof. We piped in the line set, and we went to go start it up. But it was funny because when I was opening up the line set box, I opened it up and there was, you know, 7/8, 3/8 car, 7/8 half-inch copper, and there was a thermostat wire in there. And I'm like, what the heck? They sent us a residential air conditioning line set. And I took that thermostat wire and I threw it away and installed the ice machine. Well, on the Indigo ice machines, they actually take that thermostat wire and they have communication between the upstairs unit and the downstairs unit. When I went to go turn on the ice machine, it didn't work. Long story short, I figured out, hey, you know that thermostat wire that I threw away? I actually need that. Go get it. and we had to install it. And that simply came because I didn't read the installation instructions. I assumed that it was going to be just like the previous models, that I'd install hundreds of them. And then, you know, again, it's so easy to become complacent and just stay in your little zone and just do your thing and not understand the changes that are coming down the pipe. Okay. We have new refrigerants every single day, and we as technicians and owners need to better ourselves and educate ourselves, right? We have lots of different methods. We have several different YouTube channels, HVAC School. We have my channel, HVACR Survival, my buddy Rick. We have the Advanced Refrigeration Podcast, which also has a YouTube channel. There's so many different methods, right? There's so many different channels, and I know I'm missing a bunch of them right now. If you go to my recommended on my channels, you'll see the channels that I recommend, right? And there's probably more too, because every day there's a new channel coming out, and there's great, valuable information that we as technicians, there's nothing better than a podcast, right? Because when you're driving down the road, what else are you going to do? Listen to the radio? Turn on a podcast. Educate yourself while you're driving. You know, so many things we can do. When you go to the gym, turn on a podcast, do whatever, right? So we have to do better for ourselves and educate ourselves. I saw a super chat come through. Let me see right now. Chevy 2564. Thank you very much for that super chat, man. That is much appreciated. I know I missed a bunch of stuff in here. Yeah, exactly. So Michael is saying, hey, look, extra pieces. Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because I made a comment about that. I still have a parts bucket in my garage from when I worked for a body shop, and it has a crap ton of extra nuts and bolts and all kinds of stuff, because whenever I would put cars back together, I'd always have stuff left over. Shouldn't be a big deal, right? I don't know, you know, but we need to read, we need to understand, we need to educate ourselves. Okay. All right, so let me see what I got in here. Let's see. Anthony Marino says, hope y'all noticed the $25 TruTech Tools coupon in your bag at the symposium. Bunch of people didn't notice them. That's really cool. I was a speaker, so I didn't get a normal bag at the symposium, but anyways, yeah, regardless, that's all cool. But yeah, there's always good stuff out there, okay? Dale says, what's the main difference between AC and refrigeration? What makes refrigerant or refrigeration so much colder? Okay, fundamentally, there's no difference between air conditioning and refrigeration. All we are doing is transferring heat, okay? Ironically, we don't make things cold. What we do is we remove heat, okay? Because there actually is no cold. There's only the absence of heat. So when you remove heat, things become cold, right? Cold is just kind of like a term that we use. But air conditioning and refrigeration, fundamentally, still the same concept. You're transferring heat from one place to another. That's all you're doing. Okay. In refrigeration, it definitely gets colder. So we add some more controls into the system. Temperature controllers, the thresholds are a lot lower. Temperature controller, thermostat, same thing. Thermostat's just a programmable temperature controller that has logic built into it. We also have temperature controllers for reach-in coolers that have logic built into them too, okay? Some of these temperature controllers for the refrigeration equipment, you can launch a damn space shuttle with, because they do so many different things. All right. But there's really no fundamental difference between refrigeration and air conditioning. Air conditioning is comfort cooling. I mean, it's really just the temperatures at which we're maintaining, but you still have a compressor, you still have a metering device, you still have a evaporator, and you still have a condenser of some sort. Okay. And even the most complex supermarket refrigeration systems that are doing all kinds of different stuff, it still breaks down to the fundamentals: compressor, evaporator, condenser, metering device. Okay. Now you add all kinds of different things in there to gain energy efficiency, to control defrost, to do different stuff, but fundamentally they're still the same. So there's no huge difference. Okay. People get afraid of refrigeration. That's too complicated. It's really not. And if you start from the basics and you build your way up, it's really not that bad. It really isn't. Okay. So let me see what else we got going on in here. Refrigeration Mentor, my buddy Trevor Matthews. If you guys want to learn anything about refrigeration, go check out refrigerationmentor.com. Trevor does company-wide trainings. He does individual trainings. Trevor is making waves in the industry, and I'm trying to be his friend so I can just ride his coattails as he's just going to blaze through everything, okay? Trevor is a cool dude. He's a really good friend of mine, and another thing that people may or may not know about Trevor Matthews is he is one of the nicest people that I know. I mean, genuinely, the guy messages me probably 2 to 3 times a week just to say, hey, Chris, how's everything going? How's your day going? And not only does Trevor just message me to say how my day's going, he'll say, hey, Chris, when we talked the other day, you said you were having an issue with this. How's that going? Have you been working on that? Like, he's a true friend that questions me on my weaknesses, you know, that I've admitted to him. And then he says, are you working on that? You know, I mean, he's a genuine good guy. So Trevor Matthews is a person to watch in this industry for sure. But definitely, if you want to find out more, refrigerationmentor.com. So, has anybody seen the new Klein HVAC Tools HVAC multi-tool? I don't know that I've seen the multi-tool, but man, there's new tools coming out every single day. There's so many different channels, but there is a good one, Tool Pros. If you look them up on YouTube, they have they're on Instagram. Brent Ridley, Billy Noth, they do a good job with more HVAC side tools. They do a pretty good job kind of talking about all the new stuff coming out. Let's see what else we got going on in here. All right, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and get to my list of things to talk about. I'm not going to be in here like forever tonight because I want to start cutting these things a little bit shorter, but definitely got some stuff. So I had a question on a recent video where I was de-icing a walk-in freezer, and the person said, hey, how come you didn't use a hair dryer or a heat gun? And the reason why he said that was because I was probably talking about how when I'm de-icing a walk-in freezer, you need to be so careful not to get water on the floor. Okay. And I get people all the time in my comments in my chat. Number one, you should use a torch. If you want to talk about using a torch, you need to talk to my buddy or listen to the story from Brett Wetzel on the Advanced Refrigeration podcast. He'll tell a story. And if he hasn't already, I'm sure he'll tell it on a new one coming up or something like that. He'll tell a story about someone using a torch to melt an industrial walk-in freezer evaporator that was iced up. And some really bad stuff happened because someone was using a giant torch, like the giant torches that you use when you're roofing, you know, connected to giant propane tanks. Yeah, someone was using that, and it was an epic disaster. So check out the Advanced Refrigeration podcast. I'm sure Brett will tell that story at some point, maybe on a live or something like that. But regardless, I don't like using a torch because there's a lot of things that can happen. You can actually melt the aluminum fins on the evaporator very easily. Even if they're covered in ice, you can still melt them to where they disintegrate. Aluminum has a low temperature melt point, so we need to be careful about that. The next thing when you're using a torch is that heat has to go somewhere, and there's a lot of electrical wires and different things that can become damaged because of that heat. And then on top of that, you have a combustible gas, and there's byproducts of that combustible gas once it's gone through the combustion process. Oftentimes, there can be those combustible gas byproducts can build up in the walk-in cooler depending on the size of it, and it can actually cause a breathing problem for you. That stuff can get into your lungs, displace the oxygen in your lungs. It's not a good thing, okay? So trust me from experience, you don't want to be in an enclosed space with the torch running for very long because it can cause some serious issues. Now, a heat gun and a hair dryer, things like that. Personally, I find that water is the fastest, most efficient way to melt ice in an evaporator. But you got to be careful not to get it all over the floor. There's nothing worse than getting water all over a giant walk-in freezer floor, right? And if you guys have ever worked in a giant walk-in freezer, you'll know what I'm talking about. But if you work in the smaller ones, like I show in most of my videos, yeah, you get water on the floor. There's some things that can happen, but for the most part, you can prop the doors open. You can thaw out the floor. But when you're in a giant industrial size freezer, if you get water on that floor, just because you're melting the ice on one evaporator doesn't mean that the temperature is going to come up very high at all inside that industrial freezer, right? It can still be negative 20 degrees in there, even if you're standing there with a torch, okay? Because it's just such a giant freezer, and it's probably got multiple evaporator coils running it. So you get ice on that floor, it's going to instantly freeze, and then it's a giant slip hazard and a disaster to clean up. Okay, so, but then on top of that, once you get ice on a walk-in freezer floor, it can actually get underneath the flooring. And then when that happens, it can actually freeze, and then it'll lift up the flooring and cause catastrophic damage to the structure of that walk-in box. But I personally find that water is the best, most efficient way to de-ice a walk-in freezer evaporator. After I've removed all the fan motors and everything that I can, I'll get in there and just blast it all off with water, trying to keep it off of the floor, maintaining or paying attention to the drain, making sure it's not going to overflow. And then I just stop and let the drain catch up, then start defrosting again. So that's my personal preference, is to use water whenever possible. Hot water preferably, but cold water is just as effective. All right. Ever use a steamer? No, Steve, I've never used a steamer. If someone could give me a compelling argument and show me a steamer that would actually work and wouldn't freeze when you're standing in the walk-in freezer, because you got to remember, you're in a cold space right there, right? So you have a steamer with a reservoir in it. Is that water going to freeze? What's keeping the water in the steamer's reservoir from freezing? Like that kind of stuff. That's what you need to think about. All right, let me see what else we got in here. Am I still interested at all in servicing hot site equipment or no? Jake K. No, never really been too interested in servicing hot site equipment. I stay busy enough in the refrigeration side. So I have lots of friends that do the hot side, but just not my thing. What's worse than water on the floor, poop on the roof? Did I tell you that story, Alaska? There's been a few times, actually. You know, sometimes you got to go when you got to go. So you got to be cautious about that. If you guys want to hear more about that one, you definitely need to come over to my other show that I do with my friends on the HVAC Overtime YouTube channel, because that one's where I'll go into depth about some other crazy things. So let me see what else. What else we got going on here? Have I worked on Heatcraft beacon systems? John Deere, no, I have not worked on a traditional beacon system. I've worked on Intelligen, QRC, which are all just kind of dumbed down beacon systems. Really, the only difference between an Intelligen and a beacon system, I mean, technically an Intelligen, I think, can become a beacon system, but it's really the communication. My systems typically don't have communication with the rooftop equipment. It's just a slave or a dumb condenser unit on the roof with a smart evaporator, basically. So, yeah, exactly. Okay, so I'm going to cross this one off the list. Bam, done there. I got a list in front of me of things that I want to talk about. So I made a short. I've been doing these little shorts to kind of talk about like quick things where I don't want to make a full video about them. And I made a short talking about GFCI receptacles and GFI breakers. I said how much I don't like them on refrigeration equipment. Now, full disclosure, and I said it in the YouTube comments too, I'm not a genius when it comes to the electrical theory. Okay, I have a general understanding of how a GFCI works. I did make a comment that I don't like refrigeration equipment on GFCI breakers and or receptacles, because what I said was I don't like these compressors that have high inrush, because I notice a lot of problems with the GFCIs. And I was quickly corrected by a lot of people talking about how it's not actually the inrush that causes a problem with GFCI receptacles or GFCI breakers. Okay, I agree that, you know, I'm ignorant on the fact of the true science. And in reading the comments, people did explain to me. But the bottom line is, my experience, any refrigeration equipment plugged into a GFCI breaker and or GFI receptacle, GFCI receptacle, sucks. All right, I've had nothing but so many nuisance trips. And I realize there's so many people out there saying, well, maybe your compressor's going bad, maybe the heating element. There's so many different things. But I'm telling you, at multiple different restaurant locations, I can't even keep up with the amount of problems. Honestly, my customers don't even call me half the time, because before I even get there, they just go in there and reset the breaker, you know, reset the GFCI breaker. Oh, I have to do it 3 times. And I tell them, stop resetting breakers, but they don't listen to me, okay? But regardless, I have nothing but problems with GFCI breakers and receptacles. And I tend to notice the older they get, the more problems we have. Now, again, I'm not super well versed in the theory of exactly how they work. I understand they're there to protect an electrical fault. They're to keep you from getting electrocuted. They're typically used around moisture sensitive areas, and they trip faster than a circuit breaker would trip, essentially. Okay, I get that concept, but still, all that I know is whenever they're on my refrigeration equipment, they absolutely suck, and we have so many nuisance trips. So I did want to address that. I was wrong on some things, but then I'm still right in the fact that they suck. Okay. So recently too, I made a video where I sent a blower assembly off. My recent video from the Sunday, I had a blower assembly that I sent off to get rebuilt by a motor rebuilding shop. So first and foremost, I thought I addressed it in the video, but I'll address it again. I can rebuild those blower assemblies myself. Most of the time, it's a time thing, right? Go get shafts, get them custom cut, get bearings, get all this stuff, spend hours on it, when I can just drop off a blower assembly, have someone fix it for me, and come back 2 days later and it's good, okay? In hindsight, my motor shop was completely slammed, and it took like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it was, to get the motor shop to rebuild the blower assembly. I should have done it myself, and in hindsight, I would have, but I just figured I was super busy at the time. So regardless, but the main question that I want to cover was I had a question in my comments, and it wasn't the person that asked this question wasn't criticizing me. They were just curious, okay? And so I explained in the comments, but he said, "Hey, since you took that blower assembly out and you took it to a motor rebuilding shop, did you pass along the cost of the rebuild?" Or he was asking, did I mark up the cost of the rebuild and sell it to the customer? And to answer his question, yes, I marked up the rebuild. Even though the motor shop did the work, I marked up the rebuild. And the logic behind that, I thought I should explain it because some people don't understand, okay? What was interesting was I sat down with my wife after I read the comment, and then I explained it to her. And she goes, well, her thought was too that I should pass on the cost and not mark it up because I didn't do the work. Or she said maybe I should pass it on as, not mark it up as much and pass on the cost. And I explained it to her, and I explained it to the person that asked the question too. All right, I'm in business to make money, okay? And yes, I did sub out the work to another person, right? The motor shop rebuilt it. But I still take ownership of the work. I still warranty the work, okay? I warranty labor and I warranty the materials. Now, the motor shop warranties their materials for so much time, but they probably don't even warranty their labor, okay? But I still warranty it. On top of that, my customers don't pay me the moment I walk out the door. So I'm financing my customers. And the type of customers that I work with, sometimes I might get paid in 30 days. Sometimes I might get paid in 60 days. And then guess what? The way that it works is if the person that processes my invoices messes something up, guess what? That 30 or 60 days, it starts back over from the day that they process it the right way. So sometimes it might be 90 days. Sometimes it might be 120 days before I get paid. And if I simply just passed on the cost of that motor rebuild shop to rebuild that blower assembly to my customer, then I would be losing money because I would be paying the motor shop within 30 days, right? Or my credit card, right? Because I put it on my credit card and I pay my credit card right away. So, but then the customer wouldn't pay me for X number of times. So I'm financing the customer too. So heck yeah, I mark that up and I make a profit off of it because I'm still going to be financing the customer, and it is what it is. So, but the person that asked me that, he wasn't being hostile. He wasn't criticizing me or anything, but it's just interesting how some people think and don't understand the concept of, financing people because they're not paying you in a timely manner, or it just simply takes 60 days to get paid. Well, then I'm then financing them for 60 days. Now, theoretically, I didn't pay my credit card for 30 days, but then there's still the extra 30 days after that I don't get paid that I did pay my credit card. So always got to cover your butt when it comes to that stuff. All right, let me see what else we got. Let's see. What am I missing in here? If something goes wrong with sub work, I will give away my time to replace. Oh yeah, I warranty the work. So even though I had sub work done, I'm still going to do my typical 90 days labor warranty on the workmanship. And then I'm going to do typically a 1-year parts and labor, depending on the manufacturer of the part that I installed or the motor shop put their parts in or whatever. So yeah, I'm still warranting all that stuff. So got to get paid for that. So, all right. Yeah, Dave Johnson says corporate PO approvals and invoice submissions has to pass through too many emails. Oh, that's exactly the truth. And then we learned this over the last couple months. There's shortages in the corporate offices too of these chains and companies and things. So someone's off because they're sick because of COVID or whatever, and you would think that all their paperwork and their workload would be passed on to someone else, but that hasn't been happening very much. So sometimes stuff gets really pushed back. All right. When it comes to belts, someone made a good comment, and I thought it was a really good point. And I agree with it and actually do this. And there's oftentimes a lot of things that I do that I don't even think to express when I'm making a video. Okay. So I'm going to be blatant and honest, and I think I said this recently too. I own a belt tensioning tool, but I typically don't use it. Dale Marr, thank you very much. I really appreciate that super chat, bud. That is amazing. You didn't have to do that. That is very generous of you. Thank you so very much. It says, you understand it's removing heat, so would a Resi AC unit be able to function as a refrigerator refrigeration unit and vice versa? Is it a CFM issue? You've serviced frozen AC coils. So as far as a residential air conditioning unit, could it function as a refrigeration unit? Yes, to a certain extent, okay? Because there is BTU limitations, and the compressor is typically on a residential air conditioner, even though it's a compressor and it's still compressing the refrigerant and just moving heat, it's set up for a certain amount of work. And refrigeration takes a lot more work than air conditioning. So the compressors are typically designed and set up differently for refrigeration. So yes, in theory, an air conditioning compressor could cool down a room. For instance, you could buy little like devices that turn a window shaker air conditioner into a walk-in cooler refrigeration unit, right? And all that it's doing, it's not that it's this amazing thing that this manufacturer designed. They took this little device and it has a bunch of temperature sensors and different things, but essentially all they did was take a window air conditioner and put a temperature controller on it and ran it a lot colder, okay? But the question is, how much runtime does that compressor have in that window air conditioner? And how long is the life cycle of that compressor? If you take a small condensing unit or refrigeration, very, undersized refrigeration equipment, and you put it into a space that needs to be cooled, it will do some sort of cooling. But if it runs too long, there might be some ramifications from the compressor running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Eventually that compressor is going to die. And then on top of that, is it set up to handle the types of compression ratios you're going to run into when you have lower temperature, higher outdoor ambient temperatures? I mean, there's so many different variables that go into it. So yes, it is refrigeration equipment. Yes, a residential air conditioner could cool a refrigeration equipment or a space, but it can only do so much. It can only remove so much heat dependent on the size of the compressor and the size of the evaporator and condenser coil. And all of them have to be sized appropriately and work together for them to cool a space, okay? So let's see. There was another super chat, the 98 DeVille. Again, thank you very, very much for that super chat. That was very generous, and I'm humbled by your guys' support. Thank you very much. It is awesome. Thanks for. So it's cool, bud. You haven't been in here for a while, but that's awesome, man. I really, really appreciate it. So it's very, very cool. Okay, so back to what I was talking about, proper belt tension, okay? So someone had brought up a really, really good point that you need to be careful. Oftentimes, so I had started out by saying I do have a belt tensioning tool, but I really don't use it, okay? I have learned with the type of equipment that I'm working on that I can get away with tensioning my belts to what I know is the right tension, okay? Now, there's ramifications, and especially the bigger the equipment you get, the more conscious you have to become of the belt tension and the pulley alignment and different things like that. I mean, it matters either way, but you can get away with a lot in light commercial without having to go crazy with laser levels and different things like that to align stuff. And there's actually a lot of stuff. I would argue that there's certain ways that I can use points of reference when I'm looking at a pulley or a sheave and a belt. I can look at different points of reference, and I would argue that I could get pretty darn close with proper alignment, okay? Now, I know that my eye is not perfect, but there's certain things that you can do by literally just finding a reference point and using that, when you're looking at different things. Kind of like, and I brought this up recently, kind of like using a sight, right? When you're looking down a barrel and you're looking through a scope and you're using a sight, the way that you use a sight is by finding a point of reference, right? And it's kind of the same thing. You can look at how a belt is riding in a pulley, and you can tell when a belt is going at an angle, or you can tell when a motor is not aligned properly. But when it comes to tension, we need to be careful, right? Because there's a couple different people that will tell you what the proper tension is. And if we're listening to the belt manufacturers, which oftentimes a lot of people do listen to the belt manufacturers, that can get you into trouble because the belt manufacturer is telling you the proper tension for their belt to perform as best as possible. But they're making some assumptions that the bearings in the motor can handle that type of tension. And we can all, I'd imagine, agree that quality has gone down the hill lately, right? Significantly when it comes to everything that has been manufactured. So would it be fair to say that potentially the bearings that some people are using these days may not be as high a quality bearings as they used to be in the past? So It takes experience from us technicians to know this is too tight for this particular motor. This is not a high quality motor. We don't necessarily want to tension this up to crazy, crazy tension. Okay. There's certain things when you're working on a evaporative cooler, right? Those things are meant to throw away after they break. They're junk. If you try to tension up a belt on an evaporative cooler to what the normal tension would be on an air conditioning or even an exhaust fan, you're going to burn out that motor super quick. You're going to wear out one of those sleeve bearings. You're going to, I mean, there's so many different things. So we as technicians have to know the type of equipment we're working on, and we have to adjust our practices to the types of equipment that we're working on, following manufacturers' best practices. Okay. Also, I brought to the point that if we're listening to the belt manufacturers, we need to be careful of that, because you also need to lean on the manufacturer of your particular piece of equipment and ask them what kind of belt tension they want. Keeping in mind, is the motor that came in that equipment still the same from the OEM day one it was installed? Has someone changed the motor 3 times? And are they using a motor that isn't as high a quality, doesn't have as good of bearings inside of it? So it's not just as simple as follow the manufacturer, follow the belt manufacturer. It's look at everything. Okay. Look at the motor manufacturer, then talk to them. So we just need to do a better job of researching and figuring out what we need to do for what we're working on. Okay. If that makes sense. Let me look inside. Jonathan August. I don't know if I butchered your name there, bud. So he says, can I explain how to adjust an ORI head pressure control valve for low ambient conditions? Jonathan, so I don't have a lot of experience dealing with ORI valves, holdback valves. I would highly, highly suggest that you reach out to Brett or Kevin from the Advanced Refrigeration podcast, and they can gladly, I'm sure they will gladly help you. And they probably already have a podcast. I don't know if you're still in here, Brett, but Brett probably has a podcast already talking about adjusting ORI valves. Okay. So I would highly suggest just if you can send an email to advancedrefrigerationpodcast@gmail.com, and I'm sure Brett or Kevin will get back with you and direct you in the right direction. Okay. I would also highly, highly suggest that you look up Sporlin. Hold on just one second. Sporlin 90-30, I think, is the tech document. That's charging. Hold on just one second. 90-30. I don't want -1. I want 90-30. Yeah, there you go. Head pressure control valves. Sporlin literature 90-30. Okay. So 90-30 will break down the operation of LAC valves, ORIs, OROA valves, and explain how to set and adjust them. So I would highly suggest that you check out Sporlin 90-30, and I will put a link in the show notes of the video right now, in the chat right now, where you can check that out. But yeah, I would not be the best person to ask that question. So there's a link in there right now. Click that link. Let me see what else we got in here. What's the difference between a freezer and a blast chiller? The size. Freezers are typically sized to maintain product temperature for the most part. Most refrigeration equipment out there is designed to maintain a product at a certain temperature, especially reach-in coolers and different things like that, okay? But blast freezers are designed to bring product temperature down very, very fast to fall in line with health department standards at how fast a hot piece of product should be brought down to safe storage temperature, because you have bacteria that can grow and build at certain temperatures. So a blast freezer essentially is a massively, massively oversized freezer. Oftentimes, the blast freezers that I would work on in the past could be utilized as a holding cabinet and as a pull down cabinet. So you could literally put product in there and it would run at normal refrigeration, right? And then if you wanted to pull product down, you would insert probes and all the different product. It has logic built into it. So you set the temperature at what you want that particular piece of meat or whatever it is to come down to temperature. And then the blast freezer would turn on all the heavy duty extra fans and typically another compressor or something. And then it just massively brings the temperature of that product down instantaneously. Okay. So a blast freezer is really just a massively oversized freezer, if that answers your question. Let's see. Haha, that's funny. There's funny comments in the chat right now. So, okay. What refrigerant is used on blast freezers? Really just depends. I mean, what flavor they're using at the moment. It's typically going to be a low temperature refrigerant. So, you're probably going to see 404A. Some of the older ones you would see 502. You might see 449, 448, something like that. It really just depends, you know, as long as it can fall within that range. So, all right. All right, cool. I'm going to go to my messages right now. So, you know, I'm not perfect, and I can agree. I can probably assume that everybody else is the same. I do my best to try to follow proper practices, but there's also what's practical and what you have to do to get the equipment running. So when I'm working on a walk-in freezer, you know, I may not, you know, and there's ramifications to it, but I may not be able to pull an absolute perfect vacuum because the equipment's down and we have to get it running. So customers made aware of that. And, but there's ramifications to not pulling a perfect vacuum. There's ramifications to, not properly wrapping an expansion valve before you braze it in different situations. But you also have to understand that experience can tell you, you know, hey, I'll get away with this. This will be fine. Certain things, right? So in a recent video, I brazed on the top of an expansion valve because there was a refrigerant leak and I didn't wrap the valve. I'm going to tell you right now, using an actual wet towel to wrap an expansion valve can be a problem when you're brazing on it, okay? And I know there's going to be people in there to say use paper towels or different things like that, but I'm just going to give you my experience. If you take a wet towel, first off, and you wrap an expansion valve and then you go to braze that valve, that towel is going to start absorbing the heat from the brazing process, and the steam is going to start rising, and it'll actually compromise your braze joint and affect the way that the solder flows. So we have heat blocking compounds like Viper Wet Rag by Refrigeration Technologies, and those are great products. In my situation, I was working in a shopping mall and I just didn't grab it, and I wanted to get it going. I was just too lazy and I was in a hurry, so I just brazed it up. Okay, so was that right? Not necessarily. Did it work? Yeah, and it's been months, so it's working fine. Was there potential damage because I didn't wrap the expansion valve before I brazed it? Yeah, there was potential damage, but I took a risk and it worked out, you know. But I understand that I was going to be responsible if something was damaged inside that expansion valve. Yes, I would be responsible. Mr. Sharkbite, thank you very much for that super chat. That is amazing. He said, do I work on Wendy's stuff? So, first and foremost, I don't ever name the restaurants that I work at, okay? So I can neither confirm nor deny that I work at Wendy's, okay? And on the flip side, it's fine in the super chat. It's fine in the chat. Don't worry about it. But those are actually the only comments I ever delete on videos. No, I take that back. Those are the comments that I delete the most when people try to guess restaurants right or wrong. But your comment in there, Mr. Sharkbite, is fine. It's no big deal. But yeah, I can neither confirm nor deny that I work for Wendy's. I don't ever confirm or deny restaurants that I work at. I leave that out of it. So when pumping down a system, right? So when you pump down a system, you close off the king valve at the outlet of the receiver, but the compressor continues to pump. And what it does is if the receiver and the condenser are sized appropriately, the refrigerant continues to get pumped through the system, right? Because the compressor's still running, it's still pulling the refrigerant in through the suction side, but it has nowhere to go, but the receiver is sized for the storage, so it starts stacking it in the condenser and the receiver until the low pressure gets low enough, then it shuts off the compressor. We will often do a pump down to make a repair. We'll run up to the roof, pump down the equipment, then we can open up the low side of the system. You cannot open up the high side. You can only open up the low side. You can make a repair. You can braze an evaporator coil in, something like that. And then you evacuate the low side, and then you open up the king valve and you start the system back up. So the question was, when you pump down a system, do you then have to shut the suction service valve after you close the king valve? Okay, so you close the king valve first, and sometimes you may want to shut the suction service valve, but you also need to pay attention to the system. Now, am I going to be changing the dryer? Is there other access ports in the system that will allow us to alleviate any pressure buildup because of liquid refrigerant boiling out of potential oil spots downstairs in the evaporator as you're heating it up? that refrigerant and that pressure needs to be able to escape. We cannot be working on a system that's full of pressure that's constantly building and we're trying to braze because we're not going to get a proper braze joint, okay? So the question is, should you shut the suction service valve at the same time? Yes and no. It depends on the design of the system. What would be the benefit of shutting the suction service valve, okay, if it is something that you can close? Well, the benefit might be in a perfect situation where you have plenty of access ports and you're only working downstream of the compressor, downstream of the receiver. If the liquid line filter dryers on the liquid line coming out of the king valve, like, you know, on the back end of the receiver or whatever, if you could shut it down, it would actually be best case scenario to close the suction service valve too, because then when you go to evacuate the system, you don't have to worry about the compressor oil, right? The compressor oil is where the moisture is going to be attracted to, and it's going to build up in there. And dehydrating compressor oil, especially polyester oil, can be a nightmare. You truly can't dehydrate it all. You just do the best you can. So in a perfect world, if a system allows you to, yeah, it's good practice to shut down the suction service valve after you've pumped down the system and after it's shut off. But it's not always practical like that because of access ports and different things like that. Or maybe we got to do a repair somewhere, you know. So if you can, sure. In my situation, no, I couldn't shut down the suction service valve. I needed the pressure port on the suction service valve to be open so that way I could bleed out the system. But again, you have to understand how your systems work. If it's a rotolock valve, then, you know, you might be able to shut the rotolock down, front seat it completely to where the, you know, the compressor still has, you know, whatever pressure, but, you know, you would still need an access port on the other side of that rotolock valve to alleviate the line set pressure, the evaporator pressure, if that makes sense. So hopefully I didn't just confuse the hell out of everybody with that one. Danny had asked me why I needed to change the dryer after I fixed the TXV leak at the evaporator coil. And that was in a recent video too. Anytime you open up the system, it is best practices to replace the liquid line filter dryer, okay? In order to make a repair and braze the leak on the top of the TXV of my recent video where I had a walk-in freezer leak, right? I think that was last Thursday. In order to alleviate the pressure in the system, I had to vent the remaining charge and leave the low side open to atmosphere so that way any buildup or release of liquid refrigerant from downstairs had a place to go. So in that situation, when I pumped the system down and took my low side hose off of my gauges to go downstairs and braze, I then opened up the compressor to atmosphere. So therefore I needed to pull an evacuation and needed to change the liquid line filter dryer. Okay. So there's best practices that we do. Liquid line filter dryers should always be replaced whenever we open up the system. On the flip side, I get this comment all the time. Whenever I have a blown fuse, if it's a single phase or a 3-phase, I change all the fuses. So if it just has two fuses because it's a single phase and one of the fuses blows, I typically change the other fuse. And same thing for a 3-phase system. If I have a mainline fuse blow on a disconnect switch because of a condenser fan motor or whatever, I change all 3 fuses. And then typically I will leave 3 spare fuses in the disconnect switch because I try to think of myself, right? I'm always trying to think of the next guy, but I try to think of myself as potentially being the next guy or the next guy that shows up. Maybe he's not going to have those fuses and it's Saturday night and he just had a blown fuse and he isolated the electrical short and he needed to turn it on to get through the night. If I leave spare fuses in there, then they're there when I need them next time. So always try to think about the next guy and or hope that I'm the next guy, right? But regardless, anything that I do, I try to do my best to try not to give the next guy any fuel to talk crap about me. So if I just do my best within reason to do a job and make sure it's done right, then I'm not giving the next guy that may walk up behind me as a second opinion any fuel to criticize me. So always treat it like that. I always think that someone's going to walk behind me and try to talk crap. So hopefully that answers that question for you. I already answered that one. Oh, no, this was a good question. So let me get to the chat, see what I'm missing in here real quick. Okay. Why don't I pump it down with the solenoid? Mario, I don't ever trust a solenoid as my pump down circuit, because if you did pump it down with the solenoid, you're still going to end up having to pump the system down at the king valve to go ahead and replace the liquid line filter dryer, because typically the filter dryer is after the receiver before the solenoid valve. So if you use the solenoid valve as your pump down device, but then on top of that, I don't trust a solenoid valve to hold back all that refrigerant. It just doesn't sound like something that I want to be doing, unless you had ball valves or something after the solenoid valve just to protect you. But still, I just use the king valve in the receiver. I keep my torch on the first side too long. Move it to the other side sooner. Dale Marr, I'm always doing whatever with my torches, man. You know, it really just depends on the situation. I'm sure that there's many things that I do wrong. So Bruce had brought up a good point about replacing, well, he brought up a good point, but I'm going to also contradict his point too. So Bruce had emailed me and he said, hey, you were working on it was a video from a long time ago. I was working on an AC unit, and I ended up replacing a pulley because it was worn out. Okay. So I'm going to actually play you guys a clip right now of a little video that I made real quick. Hold on. Okay. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to turn this off, and I'm going to turn this off. And I'm going to transition over, and I'm going to play you guys a little video clip, and then we're going to talk about it after, okay? All right, I have two adjustable motor pulleys or sheaves right here, okay? This is a brand new one, and this is a worn out one. Now, I can clearly look at this worn out one and tell that it's worn out because of the ridge, and you guys can look at this one and maybe you can see it. On one of these adjustable sheaves or pulleys, you want the ridge to be completely flat. Now, this is a pulley gauge right here, okay? And you want it to basically line right up when you put the edge, and you want it to be flat against the surface of the pulley, and the pulley should be a straight surface, okay? That's a good pulley. That is a bad pulley. See how nothing lines up when you put it on the edge like that, okay? So sometimes, now this is a gauge tool from Browning. I don't know if I have a part number, but on the bigger ones, you can actually go to the bigger size, and it's based off of like the pulley diameter, I believe. But regardless, this section right here needs to be flat. And you can clearly see that on this one right here, there's nothing flat about it because it's worn out. It's got like that weird round shape to it, versus this brand new one that sits perfectly flat. Okay, so it's so important that we understand that, and also understand that these, when they get worn out, they need to be replaced. And in my opinion, my experience, these things get worn out faster when customers don't do routine maintenance and they have loose belts. That's in my experience. I tend to notice pulleys getting worn out a lot faster. So when you have a pulley, you need, or sheave, I know I'm triggering everybody out there. When you have a pulley or a sheave, you need to understand that the adjustment of that adjustable sheave, if it is an adjustable one, or even the diameter, is going to set the speed of the blower that it's running, or, you know, I mean, because basically it's going to take the motor and then you're going to have a belt on it. It's going to go bigger or smaller depending on the speed. If we go adjusting the sheave, right? If we go adjusting this sheave right here, when you open and you close it, you're going to change the speed at which the blower is driven, right? The motor's still going to run at the same speed, but because of the pulley, right, it's going to change the speed of how fast the belt is driven. Therefore, it's going to change the speed of the blower. So the point that the person, Bruce, had brought up to me is, he said, why am I replacing those pulleys? Why don't I adjust them? Well, logic would tell you that, yeah, it's worn out at, you know, when it's opened that much. So theoretically, you could adjust it if you still had a good spot on the pulley up higher, and then the belt rides in the good spot. But number one, if the pulley is worn out, it needs to be changed. Next thing, unless you've got all kinds of measurement equipment, once you start making adjustments to that, you're going to change the speed from what it was naturally set at, and you would need to then adjust everything and hope that the rest of that pulley is still in good shape. Honestly, with the price of a pulley, there's no point. When it's worn out, just change it. Just change it and move on, and your problems will be solved. Mr. Sharkbite, again, thank you very much for that super chat. That is much appreciated, bud. Let me pull up my chat because I closed it down. There we go. Let's see what else we got going on here. Michael's saying, and the amps. Yeah. So again, understand that the faster that belt is driven, the more work that the blower is going to do. So therefore, the faster we go, typically, the higher the workload of the motor. So therefore, that is going to be reflected in the motor's current, right? Or the amps at which the motor draws. Now, understand something. If we're going in there to balance a building and we want to set the speed and it has adjustable pulleys. Now, insert new equipment today and we have VFDs and we typically don't have pulleys, we typically don't have belts. It's easy. You can just set the speed at the drive, do some calculations, boom, you're done, okay? But older equipment and still some of the legacy equipment, we still have belts and pulleys, okay? And if we start playing with things, you start adjusting the air balance, you start doing things that can really negatively affect the building, no pun intended, okay? So anyways, all right, let me get into here. What else we got going on? I'm looking through the chat right now. Cool. All right, just kind of a funny comment. I made a short talking about shopping malls and how much of a pain in the butt it is, and talking about 24-hour notice. So I have one of my shopping malls, and this happens at other ones too, but one of the shopping malls that I do service work for, they want 24-hour notice before you get onto the building. Okay, so let's see how I can carefully say this. Don't ever tell them you're there to do preventative maintenance. Always tell them it's an emergency. Okay. I think I put that easy enough to understand. Yeah, exactly. I don't play their stupid games, okay? So every time I go to work at a shopping mall, I'm there to work at the walk-in freezer. It just broke 20 minutes ago. It needs to be fixed ASAP. Don't give them an inch because they're going to drag you for a mile, okay? Always go in there and just tell them you're there for the most critical piece of equipment. The next piece of advice I can tell you, too, when you're working at shopping malls is the least amount of information is the best. You know, when you're dealing with security and all those different people, of course, you don't ever want to lie to anybody. But for instance, one of the shopping malls that I work at, they want you to go up their authorized roof access, which is at the other end of the damn shopping mall. And I got to get refrigeration equipment, compressors, torches, all this crap up to the other side of the building. So oftentimes I know the particular malls really well, and I will go to management. I will bypass the security people, go to management, say, hey, I'm here to do a big job today. I'm going to be on the roof for like 12 hours. Got 2 guys here. We're going to be going up and down, taking equipment up. Can we please use this particular service bay because it's a lot closer to where we got to go, and it's a lot less walking and lugging of equipment and potential roof damage for you guys, because we're going to be lugging equipment all the way across the roof, and I just rather not have any issues, right? Give them a compelling reason as to why you need to go up the other roof access. Again, think outside the box. Don't just assume that because every other tech tells you, yeah, you got to go up this access every time and you got to walk across the mall. All you got to do is find the right people. And again, don't ever tell them you're there for a preventative maintenance. You're always there to work on an emergency particular piece of equipment. All right, let's see what else. See what else we got going on in here. I'm reading through the chat. Ethan says he's been kicked off the roof before that. Michael, no, I don't have that issue at the Tyler Mall at all. Tyler Mall is easy to work on. Jason Johnson says he hates working at malls. Hughesman says same here. Shopping malls are exactly. Yeah. Alaska. All right. Guys, you know, sometimes when it comes to certain customers, I'll get people all the time. Sometimes there's things that are just not worth the fight. Okay. So for instance, getting too involved with some of these customers, right, and trying to solve their problems ends up being a bigger problem. Yeah, you get a chip on your shoulder because you solved a problem and you made them happy, but are they going to compensate you for those problems? Now, I don't mean to sound like a pessimist or whatever you want to call me because I'm this person. But for instance, I'm going to use an example. I go out, I've made videos about it, and people will ask me all the time, you know, I go out and I'm a second opinion and, you know, I fix some things. It's expensive, but it solves, you know, ridiculous amounts of work that other companies have been just throwing at it because they couldn't figure it out. Do I, you know, then people in the comments will say, well, that customer should sue that other company. You need to give them documentation proving that No, I'm not getting involved in any of that drama. I'm there to solve a problem. What the customer does on their own thing is fine, but I'm not going to fuel their fire. I'm not going to go in there and say the other company was a hack. I'm not going to do that. Okay. I will go in there and say, hey, look, this is what I found and this is what I had to do to fix it. It's fixed now. And then if they make their own conclusions and get to something, then so be it. But I'm not going to go in there and try to fuel their fire by telling them you need to sue that company or you need to have them pay my invoices or all that stuff, because I'm going to tell you what happens. As a contractor, I've dealt with this a lot. I've had this happen when I go to a brand new piece of equipment that has a clear design flaw from the manufacturer. And I've talked to my customer, one of my best customers, really good customer. And I talked to him and I said, look, this is a bad design. This is a really bad design. I can fix this. You'll never have a problem with it again, but warranty won't pay for it. So would you like me to fix it? And they'll say, yeah, please solve it. Okay, cool. Solve it. And then I don't get paid because they say, well, we're trying to get warranty to pay for it. But I told you warranty wouldn't pay for it. Well, yeah, but we think they should. So we're not going to pay you until they pay us, right? You deal with that kind of crap. I don't do it anymore. I'm done. Okay. So I try not to get too involved. I'm just there to solve a problem, right? Sometimes I may go above and beyond and give the customer a bone and give them more information as long as I think I'm still going to get paid. But I try not to get too involved, right? I'm not going to throw anybody else under the bus because oftentimes customers will say, well, I'm going to get them to pay your bill. No, you need to pay my bill. Then they can reimburse you for my bill. But that's not the way that customers see it, right? Customers want to take my invoice and forward it to the other company. And that's just a disaster, right? It's just a disaster. So I try not to get too overcomplicated in these issues. And just do my thing, stay in my lane, fix what I'm there to fix. And whatever the customer's conclusions they make from the repair that I made versus the other company, then so be it. But I'm not going to fuel their fire and go in there and say, you need to sue them. You need to get them to pay these invoices. You need to go after the city. You need to go after this. I'm just there to stay in my lane and fix my stuff. So, all right. Yeah. Do I know anywhere you can get good info on DDC controls? There's lots of books on it. I mean, this is from a couple years back. Fundamentals of HVAC direct digital controls. This one does an all right job. I mean, any DDC book is going to be kind of hard to read. There's lots of guys in the chat that are really, really fluent in controls. So you can definitely lean on some of them. I'm sure some of them will reach out to you. There's HVAC Facebook groups just on controls. Just ask the Google. There's going to be lots of DDC books and different things you can do. Let me see what else we got good in there. Exactly. Will Speed says customers need to understand we're not their financing company. And that's exactly it. When a customer doesn't pay an invoice in a timely manner, we are then financing them. We are loaning them money at which they're not paying interest on most of the time, right? So yeah, I try not to get into the customer financing business. I really don't. I just try to stay in my lane, get my invoices paid in a timely manner, and hope that the customer calls me back to fix the next issue. Okay, try not to get too involved in the politics of it all. Where is the red on my snowflake if I don't work on the hot side? I work on the heating side, Cyborg Sheep. So that is air conditioning, that is refrigeration, that is heating, and that is what the red is. All right. Cool. Well, I am going to wrap this one up, everybody. I am tired. It is time for me to go eat dinner. And yeah, I really appreciate you. So remember, HVAC Overtime Show. Just Google HVAC Overtime on YouTube and you will find out. Friday evenings about 6:05 p.m. Pacific. Understand something. If you've never watched the Overtime Show, and you're sensitive to bad words and guy talk, you don't want to come to the Overtime Show, okay? Because it is definitely not safe for work. It's not safe for home. It's not safe for any public audience. Don't watch the Overtime Show when you're sitting in a bus because you're going to get some dirty looks, okay? But if you want to have a good time and laugh and every once in a while learn something, and then most of the time just have like poop stories and different stuff like that, come on over to the HVAC Overtime Show. Got lots of cool stuff always got going on, right? Always cool guests and stuff. It's just a great show. So really appreciate you all. And I am going to get better at this one day. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Let me do outro picture and let me click this and transition over to the music. And I really appreciate you. And So you guys thought the show was over? Maybe it's just starting. Maybe we should just like do a whole nother show, you know? Oh, that's awkward. I accidentally hit the sound pad with some weird music. I forgot that was in my computer. I kind of like it. Not bad, not bad. Not bad at all. It's actually not bad, right? Huh, I wonder why I've never used this before. What else we got? Oh, yeah, there's that one. Yeah, there's that. You remember that one time? That one time. Oh, actually, the 2 times. 2 times, right? That was pretty cool. That was kind of fun. It's a bit expensive on my part, but kind of worth it, right? That was a pretty cool one. Pretty neat. Pretty neat. All right. No, we don't have pineapple parties at this house. That turned the whole thing. If you don't know the whole pineapple party, you got to go over to the overtime show because that's definitely explained over there. So I do truly appreciate you all. It's been amazing. If you guys are just tuning in right now, just catch the recap, watch the live stream over again. It's definitely fun. And I do have to say thank you to everybody out there. It is so humbling. Now, I go through ups and downs of having issues and different stuff, and I get overwhelmed with the stress and all that stuff. But in all honesty, the YouTube thing and the live streams has made me relaxed, right? Even though it kind of messes with me because I have a hard time when I have stuff scheduled. It just stresses me out thinking that I have things coming up. Like, I hate that. I like to just wing life for the most part. But the videos and everything, they make me a better person. They keep me more connected with people in general. I mean, if it wasn't for my YouTube videos and stuff, I probably wouldn't be friends with the overtime guys, right? And we genuinely are real friends because we actually met once. That's pretty cool, right? You know, and I wouldn't be in contact with most of you guys. There's a lot of you guys that I'll message with that, my buddy Michael just texted me right now. And, I mean, there's so many different connections that I've made because of these videos, and it is very awesome. And it is very humbling to see all the support from all of you guys. It just is awesome. And it says, Weaver says, I don't want to cook my own dinner because my wife is out. No, she has something cooking in the crock pot. They should be getting home here soon. So, and then we'll have all that stuff. But yep, I appreciate it. We did meet once, Laska. We did. Met a lot of you guys in different points in time. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. All right, but for real, I'm going to end this. And this time, I'm just going to do an